Right now, we would continue on our ECU opponent previews. We have knocked out over half of the teams now, and we will talk some UCF football with Marc Daniels, the play-by-play voice of the Knights, as he joins us here on Pirate Radio Live. Marc, always appreciate your time. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your time as always. We've had a lot of these summer conversations over the years, and this might be the last one as UCF off to the Big 12, but before they go there, another round of American football. And Marc, before we look at 2022, let's look at 2021, 9-4, undefeated at home for UCF. You've got some bright spots. Also, UCF, especially offensively, looked human at times, which was different to see. I look back at the 20-16 victory for the Knights over our East Carolina Pirates, 14-10 win over Tulane, 17-13 over South Florida. So winning some defensive games there. We're used to seeing these high-flying offenses and a lot of points on the board, but had to win in different ways last year. So what was the, the overall outlook on 2021 UCF football?
Well, Gus Malzahn's first year to win 9 football games and cap the season off beating Florida in a bowl game at a sold-out stadium in Tampa, I think made it a very successful year. You mentioned, the type of tight football games UCF was in. I think a big factor for that was the number of injuries. UCF was absolutely decimated on the offensive side. Losing quarterback Dylan Gabriel at the end of the Louisville football game, and the Knights went and played a true freshman quarterback. UCF lost its best running back who missed more than half the season. UCF lost multiple offensive linemen that missed a good chunk of the year. They lost its best wide receiver that missed 7 games. They went through a series of injuries that made it challenging for Gus to run what his offense would normally be. So it was more of a case of preparing week to week a game plan to give you a chance to be successful. And sometimes I think it came down to possession by possession and play by play to get creative. I thought Gus did a phenomenal job considering the amount of personnel that UCF lost on offense, and to find a way to get to 9 wins. And yes, the defense certainly had to step up in certain football games, but when you break it down as to what happened, it was not a healthy offense that struggled. It was an offense that lost its best players at times throughout the entire season and, found a way to win some games. So, I think the offense, assuming healthier this year, will kind of get back to the type of offense that Gus wants. But it certainly was a challenge last year. Heck, even Gus was down with a broken leg, and still found a way to coach, but coach from a little riser. So it was awkward at times, but I think looking back on where they were with those injuries, leaving the Louisville football game, they lost 6 starters in that game that didn't play for a good chunk of the rest of the season.
Marc Daniels joining us. Marc, Mikey Keene, you mentioned throwing into the fire, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks last year. He is back. What's the quarterback situation? Is he looked at as the starter? Is there a battle that's going to be taking place during the preseason camp?
Well, Mikey did a good job of the freshman quarterback, and his numbers statistically, and I compare the whole career of the body of work, but his numbers his freshman year were better than Mackenzie Milton's numbers. But Mikey, I think, did a good job with what he was asked to do. There'll be competition. John Rice Plumlee has transferred in from Ole Miss. He was a big-time high school recruit as a quarterback coming out and was a quarterback at Ole Miss, known for his incredible speed and the type of offense they ran. But Lane Kiffin came in and changed things up offensively, and John Rice moved out to wide receiver. Well, now a chance to be a quarterback. Gus had recruited him to come to Auburn before he chose Ole Miss, and he came in January and got a chance to go through spring practice. So those two will battle. They did battle through spring. I think Gus would like to get some clarity the first couple of weeks. John Rice is arguably one of, if not the fastest players on the football team. He brings a different dynamic. Mikey can run, but is not really designed to be a runner. So it'll be interesting to see what Gus does. I think John Rice gives you some different looks, but I think Mikey earned the respective teammates. So it'll be an interesting battle that I think Gus wants to get an answer to a couple weeks into the season, and then, a couple weeks into camp, and then kind of focus on what he wants to run offensively. But it'll be interesting. John Rice offers a unique run option for UCF.
Marc Daniels joining us. Marc, you mentioned UCF taking advantage of the transfer portal and getting in a big-time quarterback. How has that worked for UCF so far? A very attractive destination for guys to go to with the history of winning there at UCF, the style of play. Gus Malzahn, big name head coach. So has it helped more than it's hurt with guys maybe leaving UCF for SEC schools? How's it been so far since the new transfer portal rules have been put in?
Well, I think Gus has been great in the transfer portal. Take a look at the job he did last year to fill some holes, and then he was incredibly active again this past year. And, the portal giveth, the portal taketh away. Some fans may not be happy that a few players chose to leave UCF and go elsewhere. And Dylan Gabriel, obviously left to go to UCLA, then ended up at Oklahoma. And some other players have moved on, but the Knights have benefited from it. Kobe Hudson was Auburn's best wide receiver last year. He transferred into UCF. Kamari Gamble was one of Florida's best pass catchers. Their tight end played against UCF for the bowl game. He's transferred in. Lee Hunter was a former five-star recruit that Gus recruited at Auburn as a defensive line. He's transferred to UCF. Ryan Swoboda's 6'10" tackle that started at Virginia the last couple of years. He's from Orlando. He's transferred into UCF. So Gus has been active in the portal. UCF offers an attractive destination. A lot of guys from Florida come back home. A lot of guys like the opportunity to come play for Gus. So I think he has benefited, as good as a lot of schools. I don't mean just in the American. I think if you take a look at how people have ranked UCF compared to anybody in the country, they've been one of the better teams. Those guys still need to go out and play, but he certainly has brought in a number of guys that have been starters and best players on other teams, including teams in the SEC. So I think UCF has certainly taken advantage of what is certainly a changing world when it comes to the transfer portal.
Marc Daniels joining us, play-by-play voice of the UCF Knights. The Knights last year scoring nearly 32 points a game and allowing just 24 points per game. And in 2022, 2021, Marc, that is a very good number. That'll give you a chance to win every week. So how about the defense heading into 2022? Do you expect another solid year on that side of the ball?
Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator, worked with Gus and his staff at Auburn. He's one of the best defensive coordinators, young coordinators in the country. And last year, again, kind of had to adapt to the personnel that he had. But he inherited some talent. They've also been active in the portal as well. The strength of UCS defense is on the backside. Everybody returns for them, and they've got really three solid corners, Corey Thornton, Devontae Brown, and Brandon Adams, all have NFL potential. Devon Wilson's a Georgia transfer that now is a couple years in the system at UCF. He kind of plays that nickel bandit safety out there. Quadric Bullard is another kid, a safety that probably has NFL potential. So their strength is in the secondary where everybody comes back, and they've added some young players to that. Up front defensively, they bring back their ends. It'll be really strong in Josh Stellisgard, Trayvon Morris-Brash, Landon Woodson, added a couple of guys. Ricky Barber is a second-year player in the system. He's a transfer to Western Kentucky that was an All-CUSA player that had a really big start before he got hurt last year. They added Lee Hunter from Auburn. If there's a little bit of a spot that has a question mark, it's at linebacker, just from a number standpoint. UCF returned the starter last year, but they need some depth there. They've got a couple of guys that transferred in, one from Maryland that's going to be, I think, an impact player for them, and Terrence Lewis. It's a former five-star kid. So there's some areas there in that middle spot defensively, but they should be really good from a defensive standpoint. Made big strides from 2 years ago to last year, and I think they expect to be even better this year.
Marc Daniels joining us, talking UCF football. Marc, schedule sets up pretty nicely for the Knights. The non-conference, they get Louisville and Georgia Tech at home. They've got SMU at home, also Cincinnati at home. On the road, they'll take on the Pirates here in Greenville October 22nd. Also at Memphis, at Tulane, at South Florida. Knights lost to Navy last year. They'll get them at home as well. So, sets up for what could be a really solid last year in the AAC when you look at the schedule.
Well, schedules are always interesting until you start to play them, and then it just kind of depends how the season evolves. I mean, I don't think there's a game that UCF can't win on the schedule. It doesn't mean they're going to win them all. I think that you just can't predict, as we saw last year with injuries that kind of took things in a different direction until UCF kind of gathered themselves and finished strong. It certainly is a nice schedule in the sense that UCF leaves the state of Florida only 3 times. They have 7 home games. They play a road game down at FAU and a road game over at South Florida in Tampa. So 9 games in the state certainly helps. But it is interesting and challenging. It's nice to get Louisville and Georgia Tech at home. You get a Louisville team with a talented returning quarterback, Malik Cunningham. It's a game that UCF lost on a fluke tip last year that was returned for a touchdown. But a talented SMU team comes after the game against Georgia Tech, and then starting with that game against ECU. certainly UCF expects a tough game to go to Greenville, and then the schedule after that road game, you come home to play Cincinnati, then you go to Memphis, which UCF's had a nice rivalry with. You go to Tulane, which brings back a very talented quarterback and a tricky team there. Then you play Navy, and we all know it's tough to play that offense, just because of the style, and then you play at your rival. So the back end of the schedule, I do think, is really challenging. Some fans may look and go, oh, those are wins, but again, you take a look at the emotion of some rivalry games and then the style of play, and it certainly makes games a lot more challenging than they may appear on paper. If you win, you get on a roll, you get some confidence, and hopefully that kind of puts you in a better spot. But I think we've learned in this league that you don't take things for granted, and sometimes people underestimate the challenge of playing 2, 3, 4 games against teams that you've had some rivalries with or on the road or style to play. But again, 9 games in the state of Florida certainly should help UCF as they begin the season.
Mark, I don't know if awkward's the word, but the final year in the AAC, I'm sure all the Knights fans are ready to hit the fast forward button and go ahead and get to the Big 12. So playing one more year AAC competition, and then it is off to the Big 12. But, man, I know a lot of fans are just ready to get there, right? And maybe even I don't know if the coaches and players think about it as much as the fans, but it's kind of interesting going into a final year of a conference.
Look, it's awkward, but I think it's just where we are in college football today.
Yeah.
I accept the business part of it. The historical and tradition side of it, I don't particularly like what's happened to the sport. I think college football has been a regional sport with its traditions that has just been gobbled up by the dollars, that are out there. So the business part of it is this happens to be the final year of a league that's been very good to UCF, but I think vice versa. I think that they certainly respect the challenge of going out and know the quality of teams in the league. I think every fan, coach, and player that'll be around in 2022 looks forward to what that challenge will be in the Big 12, but I don't think it's a case that anybody is looking past the current season. I think UCF knows that because of their past success, the same deal goes for Cincinnati, that your opponents will be ready to play you because they want to beat you, and you take nothing for granted. It is an interesting year because of the planning for where you're going from a standpoint of fundraising, of recruiting, of future schedules, and all the stuff that comes with that. That process is well underway now for UCF, even though that season still is, about 13 months away. And who knows what the makeup of the Big 12 is going to be when UCF gets there.
Right.
It's possible before they play their first conference game, the league is expanded again. I don't know. I mean, that's certainly something that's out there. So it is an interesting year because of the many moving parts, but I know that, Gus understands the challenge of 2022 and will have his football team focused on the opportunities they've got for the upcoming year.
And Mark, we've hit on this with you, I guess last year when all the announcements and things were being made. But as far as money raised, as far as facilities, how much has changed since the announcement of going to the Big 12, as far as kind of building even a stronger infrastructure and new additions and things like that over in Orlando?
Well, it's a constant process. Everyone's trying to raise money. You never raise enough. You always need more. Everybody wants to expand facilities, and I'm not quite sure that'll ever stop. I think there's no question UCF is raising more money. Terry Mahajer, the AD, who's a fantastic guy, I think would tell you, you got to raise more money. UCF's going into a league that has a number of schools that have been operating at a different financial level than UCF has. And whatever the media money will end up being, it'll be significantly more than where UCF has been in recent years, but that doesn't guarantee you to catch up with everybody else. There are certain advantages that UCF has that will come into play over a period of years. No one graduates more alums over a period of time than UCF. A decade of graduation at UCF will equal some of the all-time degrees handed out by some of their Big 12 rivals to be. The enrollment at UCF, the television market, all those things are an advantage. It doesn't guarantee you wins, but it certainly gives you an opportunity to jump in with your feet going and try to be competitive. There'll be challenges, but, I think UCF knows that process is underway now. The challenge is how you can turn a lot of those young alums into donors. And the funny thing is that Texas Texas has the most alums and graduates, the most people in the Big 12. But the average donation per donor is not among the highest compared to some other schools, but they have more donors. So the thing for UCF is they just need to get more people to donate a little bit more money, and that's kind of how you close that gap. But no one's ever done fundraising. As ECU fans know, there's always a need for more, and I'm not quite sure if that ever stops. So, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts about where UCF is going. There's a focus on this year, but it is a rolling ball to be going at full speed by the time you get to the fall of 2023.
Marc Daniels joining us. Mark, we'll wrap it up here. Got the new fresh Feel Steel magazine today for the first time in the Pirate Radio studios. That's always a good feeling. But he has Cincinnati as the top team in the American. I'm fascinated to see how Luke Fickell makes up for all the departures. I'm sure they've got some studs waiting, but Ritter and all those guys on defense, they're picked first, followed by UCF, followed by Houston, the three teams leaving for the Big 12, and then East Carolina picked fourth in the league. Do you see this as once again as Cincinnati kind of on top of everybody there in the AAC, or do you think that it's up for grabs this year in football?
Well, I think the Bearcats have earned the right to be considered a favorite. I think just like UCF did in 2017 and 18, when you have years like that you establish yourself. I think Luke Fickell's done a great job in recruiting. They've also been active in the transfer portal, and they did lose a lot, but there's still a lot of talent there. I think Houston brings back a lot of people with a quarterback that just keeps getting better in Clayton Tune. And I think Dana Holgerson's done a good job also preparing for where they're going. But the way the schedule goes, and again the way injuries happen, it still could be a wide open year. I do think that there's some teams that have been perceived at middle of the pack in the American that do a combination of it. I'll use ECU as an example. I say this in a loving way. You have a ninth-year quarterback like ECU does.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. I mean, I say that because I remember his first game. But, experience means a lot, and quarterbacks can carry it. It's why I tell people about Tulane. Tulane's season last year fell apart because a talented quarterback got hurt, Michael Pratt. If he's healthy, they probably win a couple more games. So you can get hot with somebody and get on a roll. I think that, the perception of are those three teams the deepest in talent, that may be the case, but that doesn't guarantee anything. Like I said, UCF had expectations last year, and 3.5 hours after kickoff at Louisville, their season took a turn when they, we got on the plane and 7 starters didn't play the following week. And, a couple of guys missed the rest of the year. So that's how things can change. What's predictable in July is a wrong prediction by the time you get to October.
That's a good point. These previews and prognostications are fun, but once we get in the season, they're long forgotten. Mark, we'll see if we can track you down in October, preview East Carolina and UCF. We appreciate your time as always. Have a great rest of your summer, and hopefully we can talk to you again down the road.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Marc Daniels, play-by-play voice of the Knights, joining us on Pirate Radio Live. I want to do an exercise with you guys, not physically, verbally.
Today we're going to do 20 jumping jacks. Go.
Thank you, Coach.